People's Rights, the Agent of Change awardee, GMA News TV's Public Servant of the Year, Urban Poor Person of the Year award. At the Makati Business Club, Senator Laila had said these famous words: "Justice cannot be for the few or for the well-connected. It must be for every man, woman, child, regardless of social, economic, or political background. Justice must not be corroded. It cannot be partial. It ought to be concrete." The words of Senator De Lima. One very concrete way to understand and to live the implications of justice is to understand democracy and human rights, a most critical, most crucial reality that every Filipino, especially today, must witness to. My dear countrymen, my dear countrywomen, fellow Filipinos, we are fortunate to be able to personally meet and listen to our dear Senator Laila De Lima in her deepening expounding of the crucial topics, democracy and human rights. Welcome, dear Senator Laila De Lima.
Thank you so much, Sister Mijares. As mentioned, I'm an alumna of La Consolacion Academy, now La Consolacion College of Iriga City. I took up my elementary and high school in La Consolacion Academy. Good afternoon to everyone, to Dr. Jesusa Marco, and thank you for the College of the Holy Spirit in hosting this forum. To Sister Rosario Tyson, to Dr., of course, my favorite professor, Dr. Sok Reyes, my professor in La Salle, History, Political Science, long time ago. To the missionary sisters, servants of the Holy Spirit, administrators, faculty, staff, and students of the participating schools, the Mendiola Consortium in this afternoon's forum, College of the Holy Spirit, La Consolacion College, San Beda College, Centro Escolar University, and St. Jude College. And of course, I'm a graduate and I'm alumna of the San Beda College of Law, 1985, an alumna of San Beda College of Law, just like you know who, our president. Fellow Bedan, but of course is much senior. First of all, my apologies to everyone. Nagmadali po ako because I could not leave right away the ongoing inquiry into the spate of killings. So there was a resumption of the Senate inquiry. As you know, I filed that resolution calling for Senate inquiry into the spate of extrajudicial killings. And ako po yung nakasalang doon. I was asking a lot of questions doon sa mga resource persons from the PNP. But I was looking at my watch. I was late already, so I had to cut short my questioning to join you here. So again, my apologies. I have not even taken my lunch yet, but I'd rather be here and share my thoughts on very important issues, burning issues in our country. What a year so far for me. What a year. I sometimes want to ask the person beside me to come and pinch me to make sure that I'm awake and not in some overly realistic nightmare. Yun po ang nararamdaman ko for the past few weeks, as if I'm in a nightmare. There's been quite a year, actually, for all of us. I have a list of what I call things I never expected to hear in 2016. And mind you, the list is getting longer. And it's depressingly so. For example, 1 year ago, I would never have expected anyone to say, let alone get away with saying, quote, "My order is shoot to kill you. I don't care about human rights. You better believe me." End of quote. This is from a news item. Okay, we believe you. Now what? How exactly did you expect us to react to that? That oft repeated statement about shoot to kill, 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 kill. Us human rights activists, how do you expect us to react to such statements like that? Myself, as a public official who took an oath to uphold the Constitution, including the provisions promising that the state will respect, promote, uphold, and protect human rights. Did you really believe that we will collectively shrug our shoulders in resignation, fold up our placards, call it a day, and go home upon hearing those? How mentally imbalanced would a person have to be to actually believe that that's the natural reaction that such reckless statements would garner? Or maybe it's not a reflection of one's sanity. Marahil, ang tunay na problema ay ang pagkukulang sa katangian ng isang pinuno. The lack of simple foresight, of shooting from the hip, only to end up shooting your own toes off. Tapos sa akin, sa mga obispo, sa UN, at iba pang mga kritiko, siya magagalit? Sige nga, kung ang mga estudyante, kayo po, na mga naririto ngayong araw ay biglang tumayo sa gitna ng klase at nagsabi sa kanilang guro, "Sir, aalis na ako, magka-cut class ako today." Sir or ma'am, magka-cut class ako today. How many of you, seriously speaking, would honestly expect their teachers to go and say, "Sige, Rodi, suportahan ta ka"? If you expect people to respect and support you, give us something we can actually respect and support. The Filipino people's blind support for morally reprehensible acts, much less unlawful acts, is not owed to any leader by virtue of their election. Now that the election is over and done with, do you think the balance of powers have changed? No. They are still accountable to you. We, the public officials, especially the elected public officials, including the president, are still accountable to you, not the other way around. Do you think you have surrendered your rights as against a president that you or the majority of the voters voted for? Or a plurality, it's not even the majority, but simply a plurality? No. Why? Because the president, or because no president is above the law, much less above the Constitution. Just as the spring cannot rise higher than its source, a president cannot rise higher than the people. No president, no matter how many people voted for him, is above the people. Kahit Diyos pa ang tingin niya sa sarili niya, siya po ay tao at tao ring haharap sa batas ng tao. Kahit ibinoto mo pa siya, kahit po ibinoto mo pa siya, o ibinoto natin. You are not expected, nor should you believe yourself to be obligated to defend your elected leaders' behavior after they assume power. Those acts are their own, and you have all the right in the world to voice your objection. Don't let anyone make you believe that you are complicit with their crimes just because you exercise your right to vote. Huwag ka pong maniwala na ang pagboto mo sa kanya ay lisensya niya para lapastanganin ang inyong mga karapatan at mas lalo na ang pumatay at lumapastangan sa karapatan ng iba sa inyong pangalan. Doon po sa mga bumoto. Sabi nga po ni Attorney Jose Manuel Jocno, Dean Jose Manuel Jocno, Mr. President, do not kill in my name. Not in my name. Can we say it? Not in my name. Please say it. Again, please. Louder, please. Kung talaga pong war on drugs ito, bakit ang mga mahihirap lamang ang namamatay? Samantalang, ang mga convicted o self-confessed na mga drug lords ay naroon sa House of Representatives nakapila para maambunan ng immunity. Sigurado po ba tayong war on drugs? Baka naman ibang problemang panlipunan pala ang sinusolusyonan dyan. Kasi mukhang war on poverty ang totoong nasusolusyonan dahil sa dinami namin ng mga napapatay, ang overwhelming majority of them are the poor. Yung mga nakachinelas, minsan wala pang chinelas, the powerless, the voiceless, the defenseless. Yung walang mga abogado, walang mga security guard, walang mga firearms. I hope they're not attempting to solve the poverty problem by killing the poor, either quickly through your war on drugs or slowly by alienating the investors. There are ways to solve the problem, and quick fixes are just a lazy man's first resort. Hindi masusolusyonan po ang problema kung ang problema ay nasa harapan mo na pero hindi mo pa nakikita. People are saying that the Senate hearings on extrajudicial killings were just a ploy that I was using to undermine the president. That it was a political gambit that had no legislative purpose. They may say what they will, or they want to say. But people have enough discernment would have already realized the biggest part of the problem that allows criminality to abound, and not just the drug trade. One of the first clues is so absurd, it was thought of as funny, but in truth, it is a horrifying glimpse into a reality. Dun po sa pinakaunang hearing, o isa sa mga pinakahunang hearing nung Senate inquiry, nung ako pa po yung chairperson, a high-ranking police officer who appeared before the Senate assured those present that they have filed murder charges against the police personnel involved in a suspected EJK case. I'm referring to that case in Pasay City. Asked why the charges filed were murder, he replied, the police officer replied in open proceedings. Ang sabi po niya, dahil po merong namatay. People laughed, including some senators. But I couldn't let it go. I tried to clarify the question, asking why murder charges were filed and not homicide, when not all cases that involve a person's death is automatically qualified as murder. I think if there are law students here, or even just students of pre-law, you know this. The answers I got just got more confusing when I asked him about that. Scarier, actually, in its reflection of how police officers think when he said, quote, ang instruction ko po sa police ko, doon tayo sa murder case i-file kasi unang-una let them feel that we are not tolerating this case. End of quote. The fact that a high-ranking police officer doesn't know the difference between murder and homicide is not a laughing matter. It is a weeping matter. We have to mourn the fact that the people we entrust your safety and security to are obviously ill-equipped to effectively do so. Although I'm not generalizing, I know there are good men and women in the police force, honest, competent, and professional. But some of them They blame the prosecutors and the justice system for the dismissal of drug cases. While obviously there is fault enough to share, the fact remains that prosecutors cannot make a strong case out of thin air, especially if the people who gathered the evidence did so incompetently or without even knowing what elements they were trying to prove. When I was Secretary of Justice, we tried to remedy that by forming multi-agency fact-finding teams which facilitated collaboration and cooperation between prosecutors and investigators. But that alone cannot fix the problem. We have the right to expect that law enforcement agents, especially police officers, are well versed in the laws they're expected to enforce. When we say ignorance of the law excuses no one, lalo na pong mas angkop ang mga katagang yan sa ating mga law enforcers. We have the right to expect that police officers know and are well trained in the lawful gathering, preservation, and putting together of evidence to make their case before prosecutors who in turn will have to present it in court. Kung hindi nila alam ang pagkakaiba po ng homicide sa murder, ano naman kaya po ang mga mangyayari sa mga kaso na mga iniimbestigahan na yan? Saan tayo pupulutin kung sa kanyang dunong at tapang ang naisip na solusyon ng ating mahal na Pangulo ay bigyan ng mas malalakas na armas ang mga pulis para mas maigi nilang maipatupad ang binigay sa kanilang shoot to kill order. Of course, they have the right to receive enough resources, enough support from the executive department, for example, budget and other resources. Now, this brings to mind the law of the instrument, according to Abraham Maslow, who in 1966 said, quote, "I suppose it is tempting if the only tool you have is a hammer to treat everything as if it were a nail." End of quote. May I repeat the quote? I suppose it is tempting if the only tool you have is a hammer to treat everything as if it were a nail. End of quote. Madali ang solusyon na hindi naman talaga solusyon, ngunit pagtatakip butas lamang. Yun po ang simpleng translation po doon o interpretation. Well, all you have is a gun and no knowledge of the law. All situations is a first-person shooting game situation. Kill or be killed. Pero hindi tayo magpapaloko. Alam natin na katamaran, kakitiran ng pag-iisip at kakulangan ng tamang pag-iisip ang tunay na problema. Ang tanong, ngayong alam na natin ang problema, ano po ang magagawa natin? Ako? Isang babae lamang po ako. A woman who in 2016 came to realize that no good deed goes unpunished. In 2009, as chairperson of the Commission on Human Rights, as mentioned earlier, and as many of you know, I investigated the so-called Davao Death Squad, among other alleged cases of extrajudicial killings reported by then UN Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial Killings, Philip Alston. From 2010 to 2015, as Secretary of Justice, I tried to discharge my functions with integrity and without fear or favor. Ang dami kong malalakas na taong binangga, kabilang na ang pagsisiwalat sa PDAF scam na nagpahirap pang lalo sa mga mahihirap habang nagpasasa naman sa kaban ng yaman ng bansa ang ilang mga makapangyarihan at maimpluwensyang elemento, including senators. In my first 2 weeks as a senator in 2016, I called for a probe into the alarming rate of extrajudicial killings in our nation. Now, 3 months later, I am an accused drug trade protector and a man-eating slut who has had carnal relationships with every man that crossed my path. Perhaps the worst insult to my character, though, is a suggestion that I was stupid enough to do all sorts of illegal transactions with drug dealers after having pissed off everyone, from then Mayor Duterte, former President GMA and her husband and their family, former Senators Enrile, Jinggoy, Estrada, and Revilla, among others, and still did not have enough sense to shut up about EJKs when the President threatened to destroy me politically if I don't. You all, I think, heard him. I want her destroyed at all costs. She is finished. Hang yourself. That's the President saying. Ang tanga ko pala. I never realized. I suppose I should be grateful. I thank the President and his men, especially the Secretary of Justice and some members of the House of Representatives, for pointing out to me and to the Filipino people what a stupid idiot I am. But it was to be expected, I suppose, because I am just a woman. I don't know any better. How could I? I don't have the wisdom and mental agility of my male counterparts. I deserve what is happening to me, and I should do everyone a favor by resigning and hanging myself. Madness. I call madness on all of that. I refuse to, quote-unquote, drink the Kool-Aid. I stand before you today, my dear students, professors, sisters, a woman under attack, but not beaten, betrayed, but wiser, slut-shamed, but more proud of, and most importantly, even more at peace with my womanhood. Victimized, but an even more determined fighter. I'm here not to call on you to fight for me. While I thank everyone who has expressed their support for me, and there have been many for the past few days on Facebook, via text, and all other medium. And while I thank everyone who has expressed their support for me, especially the women's groups, I know that my battles are my own. I'm here to ask you to fight the greatest fight of our nation. The greatest fight our nation has faced since the People Power Revolution in 1986. But it is not a fight against the President, not a fight against his men, but a fight that will be fought, to paraphrase one song, behind our face and above our throat. The battlefield is actually the Filipino people's minds. Social media has been weaponized by their own admission. Humor has been weaponized by turning serious issues like rape and other women's issues into laughing matters. We have to fight back and reclaim our sanity, our moral compass, our social being, our very humanity, and most critically, our democracy. We start by knowing what we are fighting against. What are we fighting against? I say, it's alienation and dehumanization. The greatest weapon of a dictatorship is the creation of a faceless, dehumanized source of fear. In this case, it's the inanimate concept of drugs. So they declared a war on drugs. That's fine, that's good. We all applaud that. We all agree. We should end the drug menace They declared a war on drugs, hoping that we would not notice and perhaps not care that it is human beings that are actually dying. Hoping that, as the Queen song goes, the rock band, the Queen, we would all accept, or the rock star Queen, we would all accept that poor boys from poor families whom nobody loves die all the time. And that's okay. That's acceptable. Some of them are not even connected with the drug trade, but were merely collateral damage that they hope we can just shrug off as a necessary evil. Well, I'm sorry, but I reject that. Not in my name. If we're going to kill people, we better know who we are killing. We better know who we are killing. We better know why we are killing them. We better know that they do deserve to die. We better know that we are morally without a reason to doubt their guilt. It better be with due process under laws that authorize the death penalty, if ever there would be such laws. Why? Because as the current state of affairs stand, it's imperative if our police officers can't even be trusted to tell the difference between homicide and murder. It's a fight worth fighting, no doubt about that. But I have said, no good deed goes unpunished. If you join this fight, expect to be delimed, madedelima ka. Yes, it's a verb now. I saw it on Facebook. Which means being on the receiving end of a demolition job for daring to exercise your rights, including political rights. Are you brave enough? I wouldn't be standing before you here in historic Menjola if I didn't believe that of all the people in this nation, these are the people I can trust to have the courage to take on the fight. I don't see women. I don't see men. I see warriors for democracy whenever I stand before a young audience like you. But not just any democracy. Not a democracy that is infected with a troll virus and characterized with the loss of decency. Yun bang nilululon na lang lahat ng sasabihin ng Pangulo? Yung wala nang malalim na public discourse at puro na lang name-calling, misinformation, distortion, and outright lies? Yun bang aatakihin ng isang marangal na babae at mamamayan tulad ni Miss Agot Isidro? Not by engaging her in the soundness of her arguments, but by attacking her person, her womanhood, and her inability to conceive, and thus attempting to use her pain to shut her out of the public discourse. I reject that democracy, that kind of a democracy. For I know how it is to be victimized by that brand of so-called democracy exercised by these trolls. Hindi tatsulok na demokrasya kung saan ang mamamayan ay nasa baba at sila ang nasa tuktok. Ika nga ng grupong Buklod at ni Bamboo. I don't know whether you know their songs. Nakakapangilabot pakinggan ng mga letra ng kantang yon dahil parang isinulat lamang kahapon kung gaano napapanahon ang mensahe nito. May I just quote some portions. Totoy, bilisan mo ang takbo. Totoy, makinig ka. Huwag kang magpagabi, baka mapagkamalan ka't humandusay dyan sa tabi. Hindi pulat, dilaw, tunay na magkalaban, ang kulay at tatak ay di siyang dahilan hanggat marami ang lugmok sa kahirapan at ang hustisya ay para lamang sa mayaman habang may tatsulok at sila ang nasa tuktok, di matatapos itong gulo. It's from Buklod and Bamboo. Kung ako ang pipiliin ng sisimbolo sa demokrasya na dapat nating atimin, hindi ko pipiliin ang tatsulok baliktad man o hindi. Hindi rin ang parihaba. Medyo mga malalalim na po itong Tagalog. Bicolana po ako. Nung una, hindi ko po naintindihan ito. Hindi rin ang parihaba dahil di nito na isa sa larawan ang pagkakapantay-pantay ng lahat. Hindi rin parisukat or parisukat or any other shape that has opposing ideas. I prefer the shape of circle, for it evokes unity, a wholeness of being on different points on the perimeter, but still being on the same side, of being equals and still allies even when we disagree from time to time. After 3 months of serving in the Senate, in the first 3 months of my political career ever, although I still refuse to consider myself as a politician, I realized that it is imperative that we forget about taking sides in the sense of treating those who disagree with us as enemies. Ganun kasi ang tingin nila sa akin. Enemy daw po ako ng administrasyon na ito. It's wrong to think that just because I object to EJKs, we do not support the fight against illegal drugs. We are just asking that the method match the beneficence of the intent, without the hypocrisy of doing things for the people, while at the same time turning a blind eye to the slaughter of those same people. As my colleague, Senator Tito Soto himself exhibited last Tuesday when he delivered a privileged speech, when he not only suggested simple solutions to the drug problem in the Bilibid that does not entail mass extermination that I can agree with and support, he also manifested the possibility that he has changed his heart and might vote against the revival of the death penalty, because I definitely am against the reimposition of death penalty in the same manner that I am totally against EJKs. In this spirit, I ask that we all leave behind the toxicity of attacking one another every time we disagree. We as humans may technically be animals, but we are not unthinking beasts. We are sentient. We hear, we see, we sense. We are people, not feral animals. We are capable of trying to understand one another without destroying each other. Let that be the democracy we fight for. A democracy that supports human rights. A democracy that rejects extrajudicial killings, whether or not targeted at those conveniently and readily labeled as drug suspects. A democracy that rejects misogyny, misandry, other forms of sexism and gender bias or intolerance. A democracy that is capable of transforming criticism into progress instead of seeds of discord. A democracy that is capable of building friendships without having to destroy old ones. A democracy that we can support. One that we can readily say, wholeheartedly and happily, suportahan taka. A democracy that we can proudly sign in our name. Maraming salamat po sa inyo lahat.